what we've been talking about is the good old changes that NDIS like to throw at us. And if you're anything like me, your head is probably spinning around what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, what the NDIA are saying this week, what they said last week, and basically sick of talking to multiple different people and getting multiple different answers. So before we get into what we said we would talk about today, which is described supports, I think it's really important that we just take a step back and do a bit of a recap in terms of where we are at, because for some of you, I think this information is really important and going to be really, really useful to provide context about what we're talking about. So some of you in here, you are going to either have what we called an old CRM framework plan, okay, which is the example on the left, and or have what we call a PACE plan, which is the example on the right. So the way to know if you've got a PACE plan is if you had a plan that was built after November 2023, you can almost guarantee that it is a PACE plan. And if you have a plan built from prior to November, if you're like me, which is Pippa's plan, and I am rolling that baby over as long as I possibly can so I don't have to enter into the PACE world. And so these are what the plans actually look like. And the reason we're sharing you this is because it's see where it says over on the PACE example, it says this is a stated support. That is really important. And you'll see that on the old CRM plans, that there is nothing that says this is a stated support. Okay.
Okay, on to Tabitha.
So in your NDIS plan, so for the participants, yourselves, your family members, there's lots of information in there and lots of different sections which people don't necessarily get explained to them and don't always understand. So there's main areas. So we've got your core funding. So you will have a number of supports available, but it will be individualised depending on the plan. So these are the possible ones that you could see there. Assistance with daily life, social and community participation, transport and consumables. You won't necessarily have access to all of these depending on how the plan has been written. So assistance with daily life, you've got things, for example, personal care, routines, daily tasks at home or in the community. Social and community participation is support to join activities, so building social skills, connecting with others. Transport is funding to help cover travel to school, therapy or community activities. This often can be one-off payments or payments that are paid directly to you. So the transport funding can be a little bit different sometimes. And consumables funding. So this is the biggest one where there has been changes recently. So you'll see a generic line in many plans saying for continence products, pen products, and the occasional low-cost AT. There's a lot of ambiguity now as to what is a consumable item, what is an NDIS support, and lots and lots of challenges around this area. And we are currently building a number of resources behind the scenes that we're working on to try and break this one down to help all of our community members. So quite often the core funding is flexible, but you must now check your plan to see if the words flexible or stated are against each of these categories. So if it's flexible, they can move between, but if it's stated, then it can be very particular for what you're able to claim there. We've also got capacity building. So there's a lot of categories that can be under capacity building, but are not always in everybody's plan. Support coordination. So this is where you can utilise a support coordinator. You may also have under that same category psychosocial supports and coaching, which you can access. improved living arrangements, so housing supports, increased social and community participation. This could be for community programs and group activities. Finding and keeping a job. So this is quite often for that transition into adulthood that you would see these, which includes what's called SLES funding and job mentoring. So this sometimes are like a one-off or sort of a two rollover thing. There's quite a number of rules around this that aren't always easily informed and explained, so that can be a little confusing for some. Improved relationships, so social or emotional support to strengthen interactions. Quite often behaviour support and specialist services like that would be allocated under this category. Improved health and wellbeing, so this can include dietitians, at times it can include personal training. Improved learning, so supports for further education and skill development. Improved life choices, this is plan management fees. Improved daily living, the therapy, early intervention, daily independence. Behaviour support, so these are generally very much stated to a behaviour therapist quite often. And training for carers and parents. So this is one that used to be available to everyone, but it's being more and more tightened on. The capacity building, something that we're seeing more so now, is coming through as a stated support, and I think we're going to cover that a little bit more going forward. But it's very important to read in your core or your capacity building what specific line items are listed there, and that will give you some insight into the kinds of supports that you can access. So a lot of things around capacity building that's for therapy, that's for skill building, but there's so many other things that you may be able to access if you have support lines available.